Morning all, it's Uncle Matt here and I'm standing at the back of the garden. Just wanted to give you some perspective on what it looks like from the very back boundary. You can't even see the house. You can kind of see my neighbour's house. And then in the far distance there is the orchard and the abandoned house next door on the other side. But what I'm actually doing today is I'm going into the forest, so I'll just turn the camera around. Somehow. No, I won't. So what I'm doing today is going into the pine forest at the back of our property and looking for a couple of pine saplings that I might transplant into the shelter belt that we've built between us and the excuse me, potentially new house next door. Anyway, so see how we go. I'll just This is the pine forest behind the house. Just to give you perspective, that's the back of the garden. And then we go into full-on pine plantation. And what we're looking for is something really small that has self-sown and might cope with being transplanted. So we'll just go up this way. There's a fallen tree. There's a beautiful pine tree here. Look at the size of this thing. It's magnificent. And anyway, I'll get back to you when I find something with about 3 feet tall, and I'm thinking I might give it a go. And because it's nice and close to where we're transplanting it to, which is just in that paddock there. And it wouldn't have too deep a taproot or root system, so yep, I'll give it a go, see what happens. Here we are. I've dug this little guy out. He's got quite a taproot, which is great. Let's go stick him in the ground while it's still cool, and hopefully he'll establish himself and we'll get a great big pine tree like the one above us in a few years. So here's a little update from yesterday's restoration of the orchard. It's looking quite nice in the morning sun. Sapling that I took out of the pine forest at the back, and I've dug a hole, but this soil is really heavy in clay, so I think I'll have to put some clay breaker in there and just soften it up a little bit. So I'll do that and then I'll get this guy in the ground. Okay, so what I've got here is a mixture of some really good soil, earthy soil from up in our flower garden, and I'm going to mix that with some gypsum, which breaks up the clay, and I'll pop that in the ground, water it in, mix it around a little bit, and then I'll pop in the seedling or sapling. Yeah, I just need to put some mulch on top, which I didn't bring with me, and we'll see how that one performs. I'll also cage that one just to protect it from the kangaroos. They're opportunistic eaters, so they don't really just eat everything in sight, but they'll have a nibble at anything that isn't protected. They won't try too hard though if it isn't easily accessible. So a little bit of chicken wire around that should protect it. Fingers crossed it works. So lucky find, while I was out the back I found some, I guess it's Ixora. It's similar to that bush behind us, growing self-seeded just on our fence line at the back of the property. So I've transplanted those. Hopefully they'll create a nice hedge which will kind of border this little orchard. What else have we got? I'll take you on a little tour of what we actually have planted in here. So I've got just here, I've got a flowering gum, which should get nice and bushy. And then we've got 3 lily-pilly, but they're compact lily-pilly. They'll get to about 3 meters tall, so that should cover all this garbage, although I'll probably take all of that out soon. Down here, down here we've got a row of Castwellan Gold, Leighton Green cedar. They'll get up to about 50 feet hopefully, and we've really started taking care of them this year. They've been in the ground for 2 years, but they haven't really had any love because we weren't here to water them or feed them, but they're starting to really take So they go all the way up the hill to about there. So that should fill in really nicely. And then in front of this, so we've got the lily pillies, we've got the gum, and then over here, this little guy is a Himalayan weeping cedar tree, and it's going to be very slow growing, but it's going to be beautiful. It's kind of blue, it looks like a big weepy spruce sort of thing. Then we've got some bottle brush tree, Japanese black pine, and that's going to be enormous, but that's going to take quite a while to get there. Then just like, oh no, not like anything. This is a kind of indigenous version of a pittosporum. It's a bush. It's called a cut above pittosporum. It's kind of hedgy, but I'll probably trim it. And then here a couple of latent greens, but these are blue, so I think they should contrast really nicely with the gold, the whole line of gold hedge. And beyond that is probably the tiniest little gum tree you've ever seen in your life. I don't know if you can see that, but I found this guy just on the ground, and he seems to be actually taking, and that's only been 3 or 4 days, so hopefully that'll grow. And then this morning's effort, which I'm not sure if I'll include in the video, was I dug up a couple of pine from the back of our property, and I've transplanted that. So we'll just see if that takes. I've been told that anything that's growing in the bush like that doesn't usually transplant very well, but it would have just, it was kind of lost in a sea of pines up the back. It's really thick with pines. I also found this other tiny little one. Not sure how he'll do, but I've stuck it in the ground as well. So that kind of gives you a perspective looking back at all the new planting, and then the little orchard beyond, and then the shitty looking house next door, which we have no control over, unfortunately. So the only thing to do is to block it out as best we can. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Bye. So while I was just videoing for you, I discovered this little guy. There's an echidna in my garden, and I think he's living in this little shed. So he's hiding from me at the moment. I'll just back off and see what happens. And he's hiding.